Can you guys hear me okay? Okay, yeah, I don't think I'm going to quit my day job anytime soon, but I appreciate the words of encouragement. So my experience was basically running a Kickstarter with a day job, which I thought is somewhat interesting in this day and age how people can do that. So that's the main focus of my talk today, is to share my experience. So I'm an IT guy by day. I spend my days deploying SAP and Salesforce and various CRM softwares to users in my company. Been doing that for 19 years. And in my spare time, I like to play with electronics. I'm an electronics enthusiast. So I've had the good fortune to take a few of those projects and turn them into actual products, which I'll talk about today, how I did that. So here's my latest creation over here. It'd be kind of hard to see. But the idea was to be a programmable LED-based display for pixel art. So it's kind of supposed to be an art piece. And it turns out that there's this retro genre of artists that focus on what's called pixel art. So it's the idea is that you're creating the art literally one pixel at a time, so it's very precise. It's basically how graphics were done in the 80s and early 90s when we didn't have 3D and all this high-end graphics. So it's kind of a throwback, but it turns out that there's a community of artists that still do this. So that turned out to be a really great fit for my project. I was able to partner with 10 artists to do the content. So a lot of the content that you see here today, and if you guys caught the display, the larger version of this in the window, that's all from those pixel artists, 10 artists in total. So that's Pixel. And so this was about a year and a half ago. So I had the idea, I had the vision, but I'm just a guy, a hobbyist guy, right? I have no connections to anything. I had no idea how to turn this into a real product, right? So this is how I did it. The other thing I'll say is that my primary motivation to do this was not so much money. Although money is nice, I really did it for the experience. And my goal was to, again, do this while keeping my day job and also staying married. My wife is here in the front row. I still have my ring on. She's not super happy with me right now because it does take a lot of time, but I did accomplish that goal so far. But these were really the enablers on how I was able to do this. Okay, so the first thing was open source hardware and software, right? So we live in this day and age, incredible amount of what I call free plumbing. So for me, the plumbing on how I communicate to that LED display over Bluetooth, that was taken care of for me with open source hardware and software. I didn't have to go develop that myself. Probably would have been over my head if I was able to do that. I definitely wouldn't have had time. So by leveraging that, that was a tremendous help. Small run manufacturing. So this is a very niche thing right now. It's not something you're going to go buy in Best Buy, at least not at the moment. So the ability to partner with a manufacturer that can support a run of, say, 200 as a minimum quantity versus, say, 10,000 pieces for a typical traditional manufacturer is huge. That's not an investment that I could make on my own. And then, of course, today's topic of crowdfunding and marketing. So those are the three things that enabled me to do this. Let me skip some of this in the interest of time. One thing I like to tell people is, if you're going to do a Kickstarter, really proceed with caution and make sure your idea is fully baked before you go there. There's a lot of, if any of you do Kickstarter or follow Kickstarter, there's a lot of horror stories out there. I like to tell people a Kickstarter project that doesn't get funded is no big deal. It just means you had an idea, it didn't take, you failed fast, move on to the next project, right? No harm, no foul. My first Kickstarter, for example, didn't get succeeded. But if you're successful, but you can't execute, it can become a very public failure because it's your name, right? So there's not some company, it's you, right? Everybody knows that, and people can Google you and see how bad you screwed up on Kickstarter and pissed everybody off, right? So you really got to be careful there. Let me not go too much into this, but here's a case study. This was a designer guy that had a cool idea for an iPad stand. And unfortunately, he didn't have any real-life experience on how to actually deliver a physical product. And so, unfortunately, one of his backers happened to be a lawyer. And even though the lawyer only lost $70, was so mad that he filed a lawsuit against the guy. And he got all the other backers to join in the lawsuit, right, for 70 bucks, right? But the guy was really pissed off. So it's an extreme case, and I don't want to freak anyone out, but the point is, you know, and this is something that I think is very important, make sure you have your manufacturer lined up before you launch, right? Don't go launch and get funded, then go hope for the best and find a manufacturer. That's very important. These are the three options you can do in terms of how to make your product. The first option, which I took, is to basically find a full service manufacturer, as I would call it. So someone that's not just going to manufacture, but they're going to ship for you. They'll provide some project management services. They'll even do some engineering for you, right? So you're going to pay a bit more, but if you have a day job and you don't have a lot of time, that's really the only viable option, in my opinion. Option two, you know, buy a ticket, hop on a plane to Asia and tour some factories. Many people do that, but that's a big time commitment. Then, of course, option three is you can make everything and ship it yourself. Probably can get away with that in low volumes, but again, where do you want to spend your time? I used a company called Seed Studio. Just give them a little plug there, but they did a really great job for me. So, marketing. Marketing is, I think you guys did a way better job than I did, but that's something I struggle with as just a hobbyist guy. What I'll tell you is getting featured on Kickstarter is like gold. I was lucky to get my first version of Pixel featured on the homepage, and that really drove a lot of traffic. But it's not something you can count on, because there's hundreds of projects at any given time. They're only going to feature a small handful. So you really need to have your marketing plan, as Stefan said, and fully baked out. As a technical guy, I think it's very hard to explain what you're doing in a short and sweet manner, right? So there's that famous saying, if I had more time, I would have written a shorter letter. I think that's very applicable to this. So take the time to really craft your marketing message. Had I do it again, I'd probably pay someone to do it that's a professional, because engineers aren't good at that. And reaching out to the press was, I think, also a challenge. And one lesson I learned there is a lot of people just spam everyone, so they just spam the press. I found it was more successful if you really take the time to write a personalized message and craft it to that specific blog or community that you're trying to get to blog about your product. I had a much higher success rate, so that was definitely a lesson learned. And just to give you some stats, on my first project, I had 35,000 views, got featured on the homepage, so I had a lot more play. Second product, actually much better product, but less play, less money, right? So just some real life data that shows how important marketing is. We talked a little bit about the video. I would say keep it less than 2 minutes. You know, here's some more data. My first video was 3 minutes 44. Only 16% of the people actually watched the whole video, right? So it's tempting to have a really long video, but the reality is most people, if it's too long, they're just not going to watch it. Talked about delivery dates. So I always tell people, and I guess it depends on what you're trying to do, but I always tell people, whatever you think you can do at least 2 months. Because as Stefan said, people can wait. People don't go to Kickstarter to get something tomorrow. They go there for the experience. They're not going to care. So definitely add some buffer. That was my prototype number 3 that arrived in the mail in a gazillion pieces. And that was supposed to be my final prototype. And I was going to film all my marketing stuff and get all that done. You know, arrived in pieces. That set me back a couple weeks. So just plan for the unexpected and definitely add some buffer there. Pricing is really tough. I made a lot of rookie mistakes in my first version. A lot of people will tell you to price it 3x your BOM or bill of materials. So whatever it costs you to manufacture, just multiply by 3. That's probably a good place to start. But you know, obviously you can't forget about shipping costs and margins from resellers and all these kind of things. So definitely make sure you have your cost structure before you get too far. I found this to be interesting. So I sort of wondered, you know, what kind of people are backing my project? So I ran a little statistics here. And I found that on average, they had backed 27 other Kickstarter projects. And 10 of them had backed over 100 projects. And one guy had backed 576 projects, which is completely crazy. And these are like $300, $200 projects. These aren't just 10 bucks, 5 bucks here. So the lesson I learned was Kickstarter people are really on the bleeding edge, and they're not indicative of a typical end user, right? And what that translates to guys like us is post-Kickstarter is a completely different ballgame. I don't know if you've experienced that, but for me, I was feeling really great during my Kickstarter, and then after Kickstarter, it all kind of goes away because those crazy backer people are off backing the next project, and normal consumers don't really think like that. So that's something to look out for. So in conclusion, it was a great experience. Like I said, I didn't really do it for the money. I did it for the experience. I would say doing it with a day job is a challenge. I was able to do it, but it was a lot of work. Definitely taxing on the family life. I did have a personal goal of getting this into a real art gallery, which it is, by the way, so I'm happy to say that. Financially, on my first version, I broke even, again, due to some of those rookie pricing mistakes. Next version, I'll make a little bit, but again, not a tremendous amount. So that's about it. I hope that was helpful. So for the second one, I asked for 10 grand. And so typically what I find is most people ask for a little bit less than what you really need, and then you get creative and you do these things called stretch goals with the hopes to get more.
How much did you end up with?
The second version, I end up with 33. Yeah, I did 2 rounds. The first one, I did 50. Okay, so the question was, who was my target audience? My target audience was geeky people who like art. Basically. So there's sort of a new intersection between art and digital. So I was going after that, which, yeah, that's a really good question. So, I spent probably every night before I went to bed 2 hours like drafting emails to blogs. So I must have sent, I don't know, 300 maybe, and I would say it got picked up by 15. Yeah. The return policies. Yeah, that's a really good question. I did have a few returns on the first version. Basically, since my volumes were pretty small, I kind of did that personally. People would just email me, and then I would arrange a return through my manufacturer. Yeah, but definitely a higher volume, that would have been a challenge. Yeah. Okay, so the question was, if you're doing a follow-up Kickstarter, how do you make sure version 2 doesn't just have the same people as version 1? Well, I would say you definitely want to leverage version 1, right? Because that's your base. And going into version 1, you don't have anyone. So you definitely want to start there. As far as going farther, I think it's back to how good your marketing is, right? It's really all about how much play you can get in the press and in your marketing will determine how far you go.
What was your giveaway?
What was my giveaway? So my main giveaway was that, this unit here. And some people get creative. Like one of the things I did was I partnered with a diffraction glasses company. So if you've seen those glasses that do like the holographic effect, so some creative things like that. That was another giveaway, but this was the main giveaway here.
Okay, we'll say thank you to Al.